Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Numa this morning. We got a beautiful day going on today. I'm loving this weather. Today we're going to finish up our series on practicing the way. We've had a lot of really great sermons leading up to this, and so I'm honored that Moses asked me to come kind of land the plane. He today is speaking down at River City Church, which, if any of you don't know, that is our mother church. They're the ones that planted Numa Church, and so he's down in Lewiston talking there, and then he's going to finish talking there and zip right back up here to go speak at the Marshall East Church. So Moses has a very busy day today. All right, so throughout this series, we've been learning about being an apprentice of Jesus. So let's review. What is an apprentice? Well, an apprentice is a person who is learning from a more skilled mentor. I always want to say master, and it's not master. And I think even one of my slides, I even put master in there. I know that's not the right word, but it's someone that's learning from a mentor. So back in my high school and college years, at Christmas time, I would go help out and work at my aunt and uncle's store in Portland. And this store sold all kinds of handcrafted jewelry, clay, pottery, hand-blown glass, all kinds of beautiful woodwork and furniture and all kinds of stuff. And so I would work there. And one of the things I learned working there is that the job with the longest apprenticeship of any is a glass blower. And I was told back then that the average apprenticeship of a glass blower is 28 years. So for 28 years, they work under a mentor, and they learn the process before they go out and start their own glass studio. And so I have a picture here of Dale Chihuly. He is a master artisan that works in glass. He's from Tacoma, Washington, but his works are known throughout the entire world. He has the lobby of the Bellagio Hotel in Las Vegas has a massive glass thing that he did on the ceiling. It's incredible. He has stuff in the canals in Venice, just all over the place. So people come from around the world to work at Chihuly Studios and learn from him and mentor under him, and apprentice under him. So a few years ago, or last year, when we were visiting my family, we got the opportunity to go blow glass as a family. And each one of us picked out kind of what we wanted to make and how we were going to do it. We were assigned a mentor. My mentor was Donovan. And he worked us through the process from taking this molten glass blob out of the thing to shaping it, forming it, heating it just right, adding air to it, doing everything, working through the process. So something pretty beautiful came out of that mentorship. This is mine. Everyone else's was even more pretty than mine. But when I say I made this, it's kind of like, when your son comes out and like holds on to the little handlebar on the lawnmower and walks along with you for a little while and then goes back inside and tells the other parent, hey, I mowed the lawn. It's not, there's very limited. It's like, turn it this way, turn it that way. Okay, but anyway, it's still something beautiful came out of that. And I'm sure if I had the time to spend a lot more time, mentoring and learning from him, I would have been able to take over more responsibility for that. So why do we apprentice under someone? Well, we apprentice under someone so we can carry on the work of our mentor. That's the end goal of it. And Jesus calls us to be his disciple, but we could also call that being his apprentice. Jesus wants us to follow him and learn from him. So, does everyone here want to be an apprentice of Jesus? Yes. Oh, good. Then we're done. We can all go home. All right. That was easy. Well, it's not always that easy because there is a price to pay. There is a price for following Jesus. Even in the Bible times, when Jesus was standing right in front of times, oftentimes people would say no to Jesus. In Luke 9:59, he said to another man, follow me. But he replied, Lord, first let me go bury my father. Now, the common belief from this is not that this person was on the way to the funeral, but what he was really saying was my parents are elderly, they're going to pass away soon, and I will receive this big inheritance. When I receive that big inheritance, that will give me the financial freedom so I can come follow you, Jesus, and not have to worry about money, right? And so then shortly after that, another person came up and said, I'll follow you, Lord, but first let me go back and say goodbye to my family. Now, how many times do we say, when this test is over, As soon as I get done with this project, when my kids get a little older, when work slows down, then I'll be a devoted follower of you, Jesus. Right? A little earlier in that chapter, Jesus said, whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross daily and follow me. For whoever wants to save a life will lose it, but whoever loses their life will save it. Jesus says, take up your cross daily. He doesn't say start someday when you have, the perfect time and everything lines up. He says, take it up daily. Grab my water. All right, so Jesus calls us to die to ourselves. Now, back in his day, that literally could have meant dying. And most of his disciples died proclaiming that he was the Lord. But today, when we talk about dying to ourselves, what we're talking about is surrender. So the book says discipleship is a lifelong process of deepening surrender to Jesus. Lifelong, the underlining is added by me, but it's a process, we're working on it, and deepening surrender to Jesus. So part of my duty working for the fire department is I'm on the Swiftwater Rescue Team. And so when you get on the team and all the time we're constantly learning about water and all the features of a river that's flowing fast like the one out here is. So we have boils, we have waves, we have rapids, we have pillows, we have eddies. All of these things shape the river. One of the most dangerous features of the river is called a hole, okay? And where a hole is created is when water flows over a submerged object and dumps down into a deeper pool of water, and then that water will actually recirculate and come back. So there's a portion below where it's dumping in here where the water is actually flowing the wrong way. It's flowing upstream. And what happens is, why it's so dangerous is if you get washed down the river and you get sucked into that, is you have water pushing you this way and water pushing you this way, so you get trapped in that hole. That's why we call it a hole. It's very dangerous. And the instinct is, when you get in a hole, is to paddle and kick as hard as you possibly can to try to free yourself from the same. But what happens is, as you're kicking and paddling, you're actually keeping your body up high in the water. And so you're trapped in that water up here, and you don't get in the water down lower that's being expelled out of the hole. So when people finally get worn out or they surrender, the water down low actually grabs them, pulls them underwater for a few seconds, and then kicks them out safe down below. So in swift water, salvation literally comes from surrender. So we need to surrender. We need to set aside our plans and trust his commands and plans for us. Surrender. If I were to take you into a fire, if we were to go into this fire, and I have lots of years experience and I am your mentor, I'm not there to keep you from doing what you want to do, right? I am there to show you what you are capable of doing. Jesus wants to do the same thing for us. Jesus is standing at the door saying, follow me. Let's go. Put a little water on that first before you go in the door. So we want to follow and obey, and this is where I put master in, I meant mentor. But the job of an apprentice is to learn from your mentor. We call this obeying. Unfortunately, obeying goes against what society and what our world is teaching us right now. What our world says is, do what makes you happy. Freedom. Freedom is the key. Buy this, take this, and you will be happy. See, the world does not profit at all from happiness that's found in obedience and service to others. The world lies to us, and the world's way is not the way. The way is in yielding yourself to Jesus. In the book, it says it takes more self-mastery to yield your will than to wield it. I said that right. Are you going to be a yielder, or are you going to be a wielder? Jesus demonstrated this perfectly in the Garden of Gethsemane, and we talked about it a couple weeks ago when I was doing communion time. But he said, Father, if you are willing, take this cup from me, but not my will, but yours be done. Jesus is showing us an example of what it's like to yield. It's a lesson on surrender. So how about it? Are you going to struggle and fight the rapids, or are you going to surrender? Comer says in the book, it is in dying that we live, in losing our false self that we discover our true self. And it is in giving up our desires that our deepest desires are finally sated. To be free, we must surrender. One of my favorite sayings ever, we got it as a little refrigerator magnet when our oldest son Jonathan was born, is it said, who is enslaved to the compass has the freedom of the seas. Back in 2017, Melissa and I were invited by our friends, Shay and Rebecca, husband and wife, to go sailing in the Caribbean. So they rented a sailboat, and he has a lot of experience sailing. And we started in St. Lucia, and we worked our way down a chain of islands called the Windward Islands down to Grenada. And we spent 7 days doing that. And so one day, we were in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. We spent the night anchored there, and we went around and explored some beaches in the morning, did some snorkeling on the coral reefs, warmed ourselves and dried off with the tropical sun and a nice warm breeze blowing. It was pretty miserable, as you can imagine. But anyway, when it was time to leave for that day and head to our next destination, which you have to get to kind of safe harbors each night as you go along. So when it was time to leave there was two ways out of there. One way was the way we had come in, which is going back to the west, going through a couple islands and out to the west into deeper waters before turning and going south to our next destination. But I spent some time, we had a compass. We were enslaved to the compass, but we also had a chart plotter. And for those of you that don't know on a boat, a chart plotter is basically like a GPS, but it shows depths of the water all around. And so the guidebook said you should go out through the islands and take the safe route to the west, unless you're really familiar with where the rocks are and know what's going on. But I spent some time studying the charts and then called my buddy over, and we sat there and looked at the charts, and we mapped out a way to get out of there, to navigate through the rocks. So with him at the helm and me staring at the screen and both of us checking the compass all the time, we charted this course and we followed it. And, we turned here, we turned there, and we made our way through safely. It was basically the trench run from A New Hope, trying to destroy the Death Star. Of course, no one was shooting at us. The narrowest spot was probably at least a half a mile wide, and we were moving like 7 miles an hour, but it was basically the same thing. In this story in my head, I've always kind of painted myself as a hero for, figuring out that we could go that way. But now I realize I'm just my buddy was Luke Skywalker, and I'm just R2-D2. So, who I think should get a little more respect for blowing up the Death Star than he does. But anyway, that's just my opinion. It just turns out perfect that Isaac watched that with his son last night for the first time. So, but we were enslaved to our compass, right? We had a path, and we followed that path. We used a compass to help us follow that path. And we were guided through unseen waters that we had never been to. We were surrendered to our compass. See, we think that rules, norms, values, and all that stuff is all about enslaving us and chaining us down and limiting our fun and keeping us from what we want to do. It's not about that. Who here wants to stay close to the shore and follow the beaten path? And who here wants the freedom of all the seas? I want the freedom of the seas. But before you make a choice, we have to look at both sides of the decision. There is a cost for following Jesus, and there's also a cost to not follow Jesus. And only you can look within yourself and do that cost-benefit analysis and decide what's best. And part of that is, what will you have to give up to become a full-on follower of Jesus? What do you carry around with you that prevents you from picking up your cross? All right, so here's me getting ready for the day. Let's see. I got to get everything packed up. I've got my pride here. I've got my greed. Got that one. I've got envy, and nice sweater, Rich. Anyway. I've got my vanity. Okay, I got all that. All right. And then my sense of control, and then, oh yeah, deceit. Let's not forget that. And, okay, let's get all my stuff. All right, here I go. I'm ready for a day filled with peace and joy, right? Gonna set out, and there's a big cross there. I forgot about that. I probably should bring that with me too, but that looks like that's gonna take 2 hands, and I got my hands pretty full. I wonder if I can just kind of get it with my foot and maybe there's a smaller cross somewhere that I can use, or I know what I'll do is I'll just change my background screen on my phone to WWJD. That should be good enough. Oh, wait, hold on. Did you see Sydney Sweeney and her fiance broke up? Anyway. The only thing worse than my preaching is my acting. I apologize. But the point being, we carry all this stuff with us. We carry a bunch of stuff that we think are going to make us happier, make us feel better, and it's not. It's not the answer. So Ryan King, the pastor of River City Church, where Moses was speaking, when he was talking about this subject, he shared this quip from theologian D.A. Carson. And it says, I would like to buy about $3 worth of gospel, please. Not much, just enough to make me happy, but not so much that I get addicted. I don't want so much gospel that I learn to really hate covetousness and lust. I certainly don't want so much that I start to love my enemies, cherish self-denial, and contemplate missionary service in some alien culture. I want ecstasy, not repentance. I want transcendence, not transformation. I would like to be cherished by some nice, forgiving, broad-minded people, but I myself don't want to love those from different races, especially if they smell. I would like enough gospel to make my family secure and my children well-behaved, but not so much that I find my ambitions redirected or that my giving too greatly enlarged. I would like about $3 worth of the gospel, please. So obviously this is satire, but this is what we are saying when we live semi-surrendered lives. I love my job as a firefighter. You guys all know that. But there have been times in my career where I've been a $3 firefighter. I have an amazing wife that is so far beyond my wildest dreams of anything I would ever marry, but there's times I've been a $3 husband. And there's been times, many, many times, where I've been a $3 Christian. I don't want to be a $3 anything. Comer puts it this way. This is, of course, what everybody does. They spend their time, money, and best energy trying to save, protect, and guard, and enrich, and control their lives in an attempt to be happy and at peace. They are rarely happy or at peace. Matthew 13:44. The kingdom of heaven is like a treasure hidden in a field. When a man found it, he hid it again, and then in his joy went and sold all he had and bought the field. So what if I were to offer you $1 million to take everything you own and give it away? Go take everything you own, give it away, come back to me, I'll give you $1 million. Would that be a hard decision? Yeah, maybe today we need to say $10 million. Real estate values have really gone up, okay? So let's say $10 million. Would that be a hard decision? Probably not, okay? It's easy to give up things of limited value for something of infinite value. What is the treasure buried in the field? It's immeasurable grace. That is what you get when you give up the worldly things. Maybe instead of asking ourselves, what am I willing to give up for Jesus? We should ask ourselves, how joyful, peaceful, and free do I want to be? The only true tragedy is to live and not die to ourselves. So, what steps do we take? How do we live life as an apprentice of Jesus? The book gives us 4 steps. I've thrown in a bonus one for you. So, just understand that this path, it is covered in grace. You will fail, you will trip and fall, but God is there to help you recover. There's no requirement for perfection. The book is called Practicing the Way for a reason, right? Has it ever occurred to you, does it ever scare you that your doctor practices medicine on you and that he works for a medical practice, right? If someone with that much training and that much experience and knowledge and wisdom and skill can practice medicine, then you can practice the way. All right? Step 1, remind yourself of the beauty and possibility of a life in the kingdom of God. What does God have for you? Those are kind of fluffy words. I like to just summarize that as keep your eye on the prize, you know? Focus on that and remind yourself, where do you want to go? Where do you want to be? Okay, step 2, bring that vision. Bring it right to where you are. Take one step each day, all right? This awesome building was built one brick at a time, right? If you're going to climb a tall mountain, you just take one step at a time. Just work your way. Don't bite off more than you can chew. Which leads us straight into the third step, which is take it slow. When beginning to learn to cross-country ski, pick a small country, all right? Don't pick the United States, and certainly don't pick Canada, right, Noah? Just take it slow. Don't bite off more than you can chew, all right? And when you fail, and you probably will, don't feel shame. Fall back onto God's mercy. Remember, you are his student. I can't tell you the number of times I've had a conversation with someone and afterwards walked away and been like, why did I say that? Why did I go on the path? Why didn't I say this? You know what I'm saying? Like, we're all going to fail. But hey, it's okay. We're students. We're apprentices, right? So the bonus step, find an earthly mentor. And I feel like if we're mentoring under Jesus, but if you can find someone here on earth that's maybe a few steps ahead of you, that can help get you from where you are to where they are, that's a great thing. And maybe you're at the point where you're ready to mentor someone else. And nothing helps you learn more than to try to help someone else learn. I think pretty much everyone in this church, I know everyone in this church, could be a mentor to someone. All right. So you guys ready to take a blob of glass and turn it into a vase and make something beautiful for Jesus? Are you willing to surrender to the rapids and give up your will for his? Are you ready to be enslaved for the compass and have the freedom of the seas? All right. And become the person you were created to be. Remember the quote, the two most important days in someone's life are the day they're born and the day they find out why. What is your why? All right. Do you want to be a $3 Christian or a $10 million Christian? Choice is yours. It doesn't take much. Just do the next right thing. Start today, and then again tomorrow, and the day after that. That's all I got.